Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome. My name is Mike. This is the Leadership Toolkit. As you know, your definitive leadership growth podcast. It's the opportunity to have a conversation or listen in on a conversation with me and another awesome leader from many different verticals of business. We talk about their successes. Sometimes we talk about their failures, but most importantly, they get to share their experiences with you on how you can shortcut the path to success. So I'm stoked. Today is absolutely no different. I am really excited. We had a little bit of conversation beforehand. I have the amazing Dan Murphy, who is the Chief Operating Officer of D1 Training, their athletic training facilities. They're in a massive explosive growth mode right now. It's a franchise model where they're putting these athletic facilities, training facilities all over the US. He'll expand more on that. He's a West Point grad. He's been a leader from an early age, and I am stoked to get in and have a conversation with Dan today. Dan, thank you so much for joining me today on the Leadership Toolkit.
Mike, thank you. I'm humbled, definitely an honor to be here.
Well, hey, the feeling is mutual. Like I said, a heartfelt thank you for making the time for me and my audience and having a discussion today. So if you would, just dive in a little bit and share some of your background. What's your leadership experience? Where did you come from? How did you get into this? What are you doing now? And then you sent me a few ideas for some topics that are just rock star status. So we'll get into that.
Outstanding. Hey, I mean, this is great. I wish I could get gassed up this way every day. To be called the amazing Dan Murphy, I mean, I'm going to have to pass that on to my team. No, I'm joking.
I'll let them know.
Yeah, definitely let them know. I have to share, my story and kind of how I got to D1, I think is where I want to start. For me, athletics was kind of, I was one of those kids who thought he was going to play professional soccer when he was a kid. But going back before that, I'm a third of four boys. I was raised by a military dad. We deployed around or moved around a lot as a kid, and he was my hero. I mean, my dad was a airborne ranger, Vietnam vet, and just everything he did, I wanted to be the same thing. So when I got to high school, I was pretty good at soccer, as I mentioned. Thought I was going to be a pro soccer player, but I also really wanted to follow in his footsteps. I wanted to be in the military. Being around that culture as a kid, being around, just seeing the opportunities he got, and then I always loved, kind of the ethos of everything that the Army stood for, and the focus on service and to be part of something that's bigger than yourself. So that kind of married up with the opportunity when I was being recruited for schools to go to West Point. And what an amazing experience that was, both from a trying time of your life. 18 to 21 is, you're not always prepared to be learning the tougher lessons of life and leadership, but they really put an emphasis on that as you're going through. But I had that to, also to, at the same time, be on the soccer team. So it was like taking the experience and the comfort and all the things that you get from athletics, all the challenges you get there, and having that kind of run parallel to my time at the academy, I really feel like I got through it. And so it offered a little bit of a unique perspective. And, when I got out, I was able to, I obviously served to my 5 years in the military. This was at the height of the Clinton era. I think it's the last time we've actually been in a peacetime era. This is 96 to just before 2001. That is the time that I served, and really, really enjoyed that. But wanted to, at the time I got married, had a child, deployed to Kuwait within 10 days of having my first child. So it was kind of one of those things where I was like, hey, will this be the life that I'm going to go down? Be absent, be gone, knowing that the op tempo and the military at the time was picking up. And so just took the opportunity at 5 years to take my turn in business, and left and realized I needed to get some education there. Moved to Nashville to get my master's here at Vandy. And that's when I met my business partner, who's the guy who founded our company, D1. And his name's Will Bartholomew. A lot of you look up D1 and you'll see right away. I mean, he is the epitome and the example of what we're trying to recreate across the country, which is, he was a guy who played at the University of Tennessee, blew his knee out in his pro opportunity, and was looking to rehab himself back into an opportunity to play. And when he was doing that, he realized there really wasn't any place you could do all the things that from an athletic standpoint that you needed that replicated the experience he had at the University of Tennessee, which was physical therapy under one roof. At the time he had to go see his doctor at the doctor's office, do his PT, go to the YMCA at the time to do his power cleans and things and get, ugly looks from people. And then go to the local high school to run his routes and do his training. So he kind of created D1 to serve his needs, but quickly realized it was just completely missing for that youth athlete. And when I met him, it was right about that time when he was, it was a one store, had one unit here in Nashville in his hometown. And, I quickly saw all the things I was missing that I kind of alluded to earlier from my time at the academy and also in the military, which was just being part of a team that was striving towards a goal, that had accountability to each other, suffering, all the things that go with it, all the fun stuff that, you kind of lose when you move into the civilian world and get into that kind of you're more into yourself than you are about a cause. And so saw that he had a real opportunity there to expand it. We hit it off as buddies, and, we were able to kind of, which is really unique in that you get an opportunity to work with one of your best friends for as long as we have. It's been 20 years now.
It's crazy.
Working together. And so long story short, we were able to kind of grow the business slowly until about 2018, where we looked to franchise the model. And ever since then, we've been on a tear. We've got over, we've sold over 100 plus units this year alone. We've opened over 50 plus units this year alone. We'll be at 125 open units across the country, pretty wide disbursement of units. And, that we're only getting started. We'll have 75 more in service next year, and we'll probably sell another couple hundred units. So it's just a really exciting time for us from a growth perspective. And I've been really blessed again to have the journey that I have and marry the things that I love, which is, again, I love the entrepreneurship journey. I love the challenges it presents. And I also, athletics are, most people will say athletics, they're passionate about it, but I love the process that you gain in the training cycle. And those are the things that I think I enjoyed more than anything else, with the exception of competing. So anyway, that's a long-winded to get where we're at here now.
Oh, dude,
that's my story.
It's phenomenal. I love it. And there's, so you guys have been doing this together since like your early 20s, I'm imagining. You said at university.
For me, it's like 30s. I'm a little bit older, 29,
okay.
When I got involved. So there you go.
Okay.
I'm 50 right now.
you look younger than that. It's probably because of all the training that you do. So a few things from that. Here's one of the things that I think is so cool, because I put myself like my kids, we were talking just beforehand. My kids have all been athletes all the way through school. And my oldest son, I remember it was one of those things that was just heartbreaking. He went through football, and then he says, Dad, I left it all on the field in high school. I'm not doing it in college, right? I laid it all out there and so forth. Fast forward a few years, right? And that's one of his things. And sort of similarly how you brought up, he goes, there's not anything that ever replaces that. Says there's not something for that. And so I think it's unique when you're saying, hey, we've got these facilities and to create, accountability to people that's the next step. And you're right. We lose that somehow as adults. So is that sort of the model and the philosophy you guys carry, is like, okay, yeah, go do your daytime work thing, be a good husband, be a good father, be a good staff member. But then when you come here, this is sort of to reinvigorate the team experience. Am I reading that right?
It is. I mean, on its surface, it looks like a retail training experience that everybody can relate to, that has played some sort of athletics. And so, we'll separate the workout maybe similar to how it's done at a Division I school, where, there's a warm up and a core and conditioning, a strength, all the things that you need. But to your point, at the end of the day, we really feel like, the stories that come out of D1 that inspire us to kind of move and put flags all over the country and really make this in every community are the different stories of life change that comes from somebody, entering into that process, committing to that process, the discipline that's involved, and then the life change. Because it's not, when you say D1, everybody knows what that means. Like, I'm going D1 or whatever it is.
Yeah. And
then you think immediately of the athlete who's finely tuned, awesome, and just needs that extra edge, and he's kind of working out. But the stories that come out of D1 here are, the overweight 50-plus-year-old guy that might have had a heart incident. Me too. I love it. And it's talking about getting back to, back to basics, back to, being accountable to his diet, be accountable to his workout, having people encourage him along the way. Same thing with the kids. I mean, the stories we get are like, this changed my kid's life. And the kids never, their parents, most of these parents know their kids are not, well, some of them don't, some of them think they're all going to be the next Peyton Manning, but a lot of them understand that what you get from this process is the most important thing. And you know, and actually going, that's what's going to serve you well later in life.
No, I love it, man. So is that how you guys came up with the name D1 based on like the D1, you know, D1, D2 schools
100%.
when you're talking about that?
I mean,
That's
which was
phenomenal.
actually really cool because we were shocked, you know, that we actually haven't, you know, Will's dad was a big attorney here in town, and the fact that we have intellectual property rights on D1 is pretty impressive.
That is pretty wild. So let me ask you, because you know, there's so much that parallels athletics and leadership and business. So, you know, and you brought up the point, like, hey, there's people that are accountable to each other. That overweight guy, like we were talking a little bit beforehand, how, you know, my experience, I experienced a really rough health scare, and that's put me into overweight. So that's something that is such a unique model. You said, hey, on the surface, we look like this retail facility, but you also mentioned some numbers, and not just to dive into the business. I really want to get into like the leadership part of it, but what's shocking to me is you're talking about, well, we did 100 units and another 50 units. Can you pinpoint what is it that has caused such massive growth? I mean, is it just, and I'm sorry, I ask a question and then I continue on. But it's one thing to say, oh, hey, we've had these really phenomenal stories, right? Because that's something, but there has to be more to it than that. There has to be the leadership, the business model. Are there some things you can pinpoint on in that?
Yeah, I think, you know, it does speak back to our founder's story. And I think that what we've been able to find is a bunch of like-minded people. Our tribe of franchisees, you know, really are what make this work. And they all identify with wanting to be, you know, to wanting to open their facility to have the same impact that it had here in Nashville for Will and I, you know, across the country. So it's like, it's a calling. And as opposed to, I'm looking at business opportunities and, you know, I'm thinking about this fast food chain, or maybe this, you know, oil change business, and they're great models and good margins, good EBITDA, all these things.
Sure.
You know, this tugs at usually at somebody's, you know, core need for, you know, going around their passion more than anything else. And so that's a double edge too, because you get people very passionate about it, you know, that, you know, or more into that than they are into the you know, running the plays all the time. So it's, sure. But I would say, I mean, as much as I'd love to say we have you know, and we have an exceptional team at our franchisor level, everything, you know, really derives from picking the right franchisees and their passion of wanting to bring something like this to their community, which, you know, if you think about it, is pretty underserved, you know, across the country. There's
sure,
you know, in some great areas of the country that, you know, don't have these opportunities for kids and for adults.
No, absolutely. So as the chief operating officer in leadership there, I imagine you're somebody that's involved in developing, you know, determining and developing these franchisees, these folks. And so as they're coming on board and so forth. How much are you involved in those like day-to-day operations and engaging with those individuals? Can you expand on that? And I'm going somewhere with this. I'm curious.
Sure. It's definitely evolved over time. I mean, initially as we were growing the team, our franchisor team was, you know, probably 4 of us, you know, that were managing the first 20 to 50 in terms of that growth. So a lot of day-to-day interaction truly with these franchisees. It's now I've been able, you know, with this growth and with the some partners that we've brought on, we've been able to bring in a really solid team. So on the operations side, I have a stud of a leader underneath me, a guy named Austin Clark, who'd probably do way better on this podcast than me, because he's just the man is and he's a true operator. I mean, he was born kind of in the gym environment, or, you know, as far as got his career started, and sure. Does just such a great job with he's very analytical. He's very you know, leadership focused and belief. He has a very his mindset is kind of that abundance that we were talking about more than anything sure. else. So that's who's really interacting on the day to day.
So you have to have good leaders to determine more leaders to develop these individual places, the franchises and the businesses. You have to have good leaders. You have to have good people in place. So I'm curious, could you expand maybe 2, 3, 4 specific characteristics that you would say, hey, this is one of those things, or this is one of several characteristics that makes the person an exceptional leader? And especially because we talk to a lot of leaders that do want to go into business and sort of entrepreneurship. This seems like sort of a hybrid between the two. So what would some specific characteristics be that are, that one, you look for, and that two, maybe people could develop? Because a lot of people say, well, oh, they just have this natural leadership ability. And it's like, I believe leadership is developed. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, Dan.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, for me, I would tend to agree with you in that I really view leadership as a skill. It's a skill of influence. And so that meaning that can always be, sharpened, and, it's something that you have to kind of pay attention to all the time. And I think, for us, we look at it specifically. I mentioned that culture is just very big in our organization. They have to be of the same mindset. We don't really believe, as much as it is about being a set of beliefs and, surrounding our business, we feel like it's more of its actions and behaviors. So having, so my job really is to influence those action and behaviors within that, in what we call our D1 culture. And so our culture is, very much an ownership mindset. And then we look for that both in the franchisee as well as, the leaders that are on the team now that we have. And every one of that are in a senior position of leadership here, know that that's where we operate. And we operate, we spend a lot of time talking about, where you can kind of navigate in a conversation between an ownership mindset and then that of a victim mindset. And it's all framing. It's all framing of the problem, and it's all framing of how you approach the problem. And then, when we're able to speak in that language to each other, it's much more productive. And again, doesn't change the fact that there's an issue, and doesn't change the fact that the issue may not be readily apparent or easy to fix, but
Sure.
It does acknowledge, we look at it, I think another way I like to say it is, there's really no problems. There's only situations. So it's just a reframe of the same thing. Yes, it will be a problem, and yes, it could be catastrophic.
Right.
But we got to solve it, and we might as well take the, an ownership mindset towards it.
No, I love that. So something you've said a few times and you've brought up, you said, hey, it's really about the culture. What would you say is the biggest driver of culture in business?
That's a great question. I think, again, it goes to actions and behaviors. I mean, there's so many things that you see, and today especially, there's a lot of hypocrisy around just, what we hear people espouse about who they are versus what they do. So we're very action oriented in terms of, in terms of what our franchisees see, right? And in terms of what our even the employees in the franchisor, they have to see that we're not just up there talking about our core values of being a team player, having passion for our work, find a way to make a smart play, or, have D1 character. Those are the four things that we really espouse. We have to live it. And it's great because it's so transparent, and we're not perfect. We don't always live up to it, but I feel like there's we have a culture that understands that that's the pinnacle. That's what we're trying to achieve. And they want to be on board with that vision, because I think they all see that, it's more fun to be a part of a business that's thinking that way and acting that way than it is, one that's just talking about it.
Oh, for sure. I love that. And I have a longtime friend, boss, mentor that I've worked with. And one of his sayings, he says, listen, the key is people would rather see a sermon than hear it. Yes, they'll tune in and they'll listen, but then at the end of the day, what are the actions that are in place with that? And that's sort of what I hear you saying is like, okay, hey, we can say all of these good things. We can say, go out there and take ownership. We can say, go, pick this up and move it and get rolling. But if you're not living it yourself, that's really easy to detect, right? It's like it comes correct really, really fast. So, here's another question, and you sent me such good questions. Here's a couple of things too. I always get into the show and I forget this, and then I always tell on the shows I forget this. But make sure, and I brought this up earlier, make sure for anybody that's listening to or watching the show, do check out d1training.com, and it's spelled just how it sounds. It's all one word: D, the number one, training, TRAING.com. To pause to to make sure it's correct. But make sure and check out these facilities. They're all over the place. There's one here in the Springs. We started to say right beforehand, I legitimately want to get back into the gym. I've been, my health journey's been so derailed, and I'm just at the point now my lungs can take it. I've been making sure to walk. I have a buddy that's accountable. My accountability buddy. He's in Tennessee, ironically, and he and I text each other every day. He's like, "Did you go on your walk today?" I'm like, "Yep, I got it. Did you go on yours?" So it's like, building up to a couple miles and doing that. So that's
awesome.
Hopefully my next step. And I think that's powerful. Like, how powerful is it to have somebody that just says, "Hey, did you do this?" And they're not coming from a place of like malice or patronizing. It's just like, "Hey man, I got you." Right.
100%. Yeah. That's 100. That's the ethos of the culture in the facility we're trying to build. And then, when you build it and have that same accountability, I mean, for a good week, all of our senior team works out together. I mean, we're in the classes together, and that's just, it just sets the mood off and the day off that, all the right way. It's not just about what are you doing? And, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I mean, it's all, are you living the lifestyle? Do you have passion for it?
So here's sort of a different direction for a question, because you said, "Hey, this is what we talk about. These are the actions that we're taking." You said you have these 4 pillars, and this is what we're headed towards. That's the pinnacle. And obviously, when we're headed somewhere in business, as a leader, we're either leading from the front or sometimes we're pushing from the back. I get that too. What happens in a situation when you make it to the top of that mountaintop, Dan? Like, you've got everybody and we get up there and you've either brought everybody along with you, you either pulled them along, you led them along, you pushed them along sometimes. Do you ever reach the top?
So, I mean, it's a great question. I think that abundance mindset, it kind of, I think personally, you're never necessarily satisfied. I mean, what happens though, where the flip side of that, where it can be negative, is if you don't celebrate it. And I will say that's the one thing that we've been very purposeful about, in that, you have to take the time to acknowledge the growth and the success and the team, because altruistically, they're not looking for that pat on the back every time, but at the same time, they are. I mean, and they need to feel like, that they're working towards something that's bigger than them. And in order to do that, when you get to those moments that are, that are summits, so to speak, you want to take the time to celebrate. But, I think when you have a mission like ours, which is, that's why it's so important that we're not just, about, I don't know, serving chicken sandwiches.
Sure.
Is that, they're really, the job can always be done differently and better, right? It can always be done. There's always more athletes to serve. There's always a new crop of athlete to serve. There's always the mindset of the athlete, the things that you get from playing sports, there's always people that are craving and needing that. So, I think we always look at it, I appreciate the question, because it is hard to pick your head up and look back and see the successes as, we've made it. I think we've never really had that opportunity to kind of pause long enough to think that we've made it. And honestly, I don't love being part of that, because that's like a maintenance mode. And I'm I feel like I'm going to be on, offense more than anything else until it's over,
Yeah, no, and I think it's good. Like, one of the ways that a couple of things you're bringing up, you're saying, "Hey, it's important we celebrate it."
That's
like
right.
When if we have a goal, we go after it. I think so often as leaders, as business, we live in such a call it a microwave society. It's even faster than that right now, right? We live in this social media. We live at the speed of social media. These societies where it's like, okay, hey, did that, now on to the next thing. So what are some ways when somebody achieves something within your organization, either from the the business side, or somebody that's working out in the facility, they hit one of the goals that they want and so forth? Do you have some recommendations, couple or 3 things that you might say, "Hey, here's what we do to celebrate," and that's something they could bring? Because celebrating it is one thing, and I do think there's a level of being personal with celebration.
Yeah.
And I think it can become canned. At the same time, sometimes I'm just going to be straightforward. Sometimes people don't know where to start, because we say, "Okay, well, we celebrate it. So what does that mean? High fives and hugs, or what else is there? What are some things you'd recommend?"
Yeah, I think for us, it's it goes to that athlete ethos. Like, we try to frame everything as a game. So gamification is
Gamified.
really, really key in our process. For the senior team, for us, it's a 12-win season, right? It's hitting our franchisor budget, every month. And we have little things. And, again, I mentioned, our CEO and founder, Will Bartholomew, this is like his wheelhouse. I mean, he loves a good party and he loves to celebrate people. It's one of his superpowers. I mean, he is just unbelievable at it. So, when we do that if we win for the month, it's not just good job, everybody, clap it up. It's, we're getting, gear from the gear store. We're getting,
Nice.
Little custom logoed JBL speakers that you take out on the golf course with you. I mean, just cool stuff that you probably wouldn't buy yourself, but you really look at. And when I look at it, I remember, that was for making them, that it just kind of, it's kind of cool. And so it's not just, again, not just pats on the back, but even things like giving extra PTO, giving the team, hey, we're going to give you guys all another one in your bank to take whenever you want. I mean, that's stuff that really means something to the team. We definitely celebrate milestones at the facility level too. So
Sure.
The athletes, part of the programming, which makes it really, sticky, is the fact that we're testing every 8 weeks. And so that testing piece is always usually a big celebration to start with. We do it around like on a Saturday, and there'd be, things afterwards that are just more fun, hang out, sometimes some adult beverages for the adults, and, more of a kind of a celebrating atmosphere. But, the testing piece, the PRs, posting those things in the facilities, it all starts, with us, it all starts with a very consultative sit down with somebody when they come in. You don't just come in and do a workout. No one comes in and really drops in. You come in,
Sure.
You do a workout, and then you sit down. Like, why are you here? Like, what are we trying to solve for? Is it weight loss? Is it speed? Is it athletic, movement? Is it power, strength? All these things. So we want to, and did we hit them? So goal setting and reaching goals and then celebrating it is something that's just a key component to the program. So it feels like it's kind of dialed in and worked in well.
And so one of the things I'm hearing you say is it's absolutely deliberate. It's not, and I think, and don't get me wrong, for anybody who's listening, like, I think there is value. I always joke sometimes and I say, oh, hey, we pay in hugs and high fives. Yes, there's value in that. Like, people still want the high five. People want to be acknowledged, the $5 Starbucks card. What I'm hearing you say, Dan, is like, okay, well, be deliberate about it. If you hit whatever that thing is, you're climbing up the mountain together. When you get to the top, take the time to stop and look down and have a cup of coffee together at the top of the mountain and dance and celebrate, right? And do whatever that deliberate thing is. And I think, I mean, that right there shows really good leadership. The fact that you're saying, hey, yeah, he likes to party. Well, yeah, liking to party is one thing. You just made me, I mean, it spurred this thought with me. I still have, and my 18-year-old son pulled it and was playing with it. I still have, I think it's like a 24-inch TV with a built-in VCR and DVD player from like 20 years ago. It was a sales contest, right? But I won it. And so it's like the trophy. It's about the win.
That's right.
Hey, I won that, and we're going to keep it forever. And he's like, Dad, have you ever seen a Nintendo? I'm like, yeah. Weird. No, I've never seen that. That's pretty neat, right? So we've got Duck Hunt hooked up to it right now, but totally different topic. So one of the things that you're talking about, when we're talking about achieving goals, going after stuff, and whether we're talking from a business standpoint, we're talking boots on the ground, people that are athletes in these facilities and so forth. Can you expand? And this is one of the things that you sent me, and I just absolutely love, because I think it's something that's really valuable right now. Expand on what is the value and the importance behind when somebody talks about grit and perseverance and, going until, because that was one of the things you specifically said, hey, I want to talk about the importance of grit and perseverance. And I think to do all these things that we're talking about, building a business, losing weight, being an athlete in a facility, being a great dad, right? Any of these things, being a great leader, certainly require that. So can you expand on that for me, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things too that's becoming harder and harder to do in what I call kind of our ADD society, and that you can always you distract yourself from maybe what it is you're working on in terms of the goal, and and there's a lot of, hey, effort is important, but at the same time, winning is too. right? But you're not always going to. So having, that, I like to call it more tenacity, and I think it's really stamina with intention, right? It's not so much, grit is, you can measure it a lot of different ways, but you have to be okay with failure. It's really the failure. I look at it's kind of the price of ambition. I mean, and so if that's the case, I got to be okay with empowering my people to fail and make those decisions so they can learn and experience that piece of, whatever it is. Now, it's a very difficult thing to manage when you're a fast growing company. It's not like we have unlimited resources and unlimited time to like, oh, we're going to just let you flounder here and, and hope that you will learn a valuable lesson from it. But, I think we're fortunate in that sense that we are in a fast moving environment. So I can determine very quickly whether somebody has that tenacity, as I call it, the stamina with intention, because that piece, again, is probably more important than their skill set and their knowledge, is that their ability, like if they run up against a wall, if they try something that doesn't work, that they're just back to the grindstone and making sure that happens. Now, athletics and sports, we're super fortunate in the weight room that we have too. There's so many corollaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people that's why, we're all infatuated with specifically parents for their kids, is like, it's really one of the only safe places anymore to fail is, in that environment. And so that way they can learn those lessons and it maybe not be catastrophic, and that's why, again, even if the kid's not trying to make it to that next level, being involved in, either setting a goal and not reaching it or setting a goal and reaching it is teaching a lot of different skills, specifically around perseverance.
That's really powerful. The thing that I like the definition, you said stamina with intention. So how do you coach somebody? Where do you start? Let's say that you see somebody is failing, because it's one thing for us to sit here and espouse or talk about it. Well, yeah, I saw this guy failing and then we've got to do this. But when you specifically, because I think it's, given where you are, like we talked earlier, and you said, hey, I've got this other great team of leaders and other people around me. I think by nature, guys like you or me, like you can't help it. You see somebody failing or screwing up and it's like, well, let me step in here and offer some coaching. Where do you start if you see somebody that is floundering? What's your process, like the approach for them, and what recommendations do you normally give at the start?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I don't want to espouse that I'm perfect at it, because when you're saying that, I immediately, I can name three situations in the last 2 weeks alone with my team where, we're struggling with a particular issue. And there's a real desire for me to want to helicopter in and be real, I guess, I hate to say this, but, micromanaging. So that's the first thing. You really got to fight that urge to remember, again, if you take the approach that failure is the price of ambition, I said that before too. I write that down a lot because
I've got it written down.
Yeah, it's for me. It's more as a reminder, because you don't need to rescue people that way. So they have to be empowered, number one, to do it. And so it starts again. We talked at the very beginning. Mindset for me is probably the most important thing as they're struggling. And I mean by mindset is, are they taking that ownership mindset, or are they taking a victim mentality to their problem? Because when you start that way and you see this as a hopeless issue, or you see this as there's a reason this is happening that's outside of my control, or there's a reason, it's the franchisee's fault, or it's the market he's in, or it's the neighborhood that the facility is in, you can very quickly come into a situation where, you have that more of a victim mindset. You can also, in our guys, when they coach these franchisees, can move into even more negative mindset, which is like kind of a rescuer mentality where they're trying to do the work for them. And that's what I try to avoid doing, like we just talked about, like, the rescuing somebody. All you're doing is perpetuating the problem, where they're not really having that opportunity to learn. And like you said, it's very hard to do at the same time that you're, you don't have a lot of time. So ownership mindset, I think is the key point, making sure that they own the points and understand the points that they can affect, as they're struggling. But, we're real deliberate too about, there's an acronym that we use, an acronym. It's an abbreviation we use. It's called IDS, identify, discuss, and solve. So we won't let them bring problems to the table. they have to very clearly articulate in the identification. The discussion of course, is an open discussion, but they have to have that proposed solve. When they're just throwing the problem on our plate, we find that it's typically they haven't gone through the rigor that is needed to provide the right solution. So those are kind of non-negotiables that they know coming in, and that's how our meetings are set up, where they have that ability to hit that IDS portion. It's where we spend the majority of any of our leadership meetings. But again, it frames them the right way. They go in the right framework. We approach it with the right framework, not always, but like, hey, this is our problem to solve, not yours, right? And this is what have you looked at this? But they have to bring the proposed solution to the table.
I think that's super powerful. I love it. I do the same thing, because it's really easy to fall in the trap. Like if we're those type A personalities, I'm a leader, I'm a business owner, and people come in all day long. The problem, instead of being a leader, you become a firefighter, right? Because everybody brings you the problem identified, they want to discuss it with you, and then they look to you for the solution. And it's like, no, I think it's really strong that and it is important. I do the same thing with my people, my staff, is it's like, look, if you're going to come to me, if you're going to point out a problem, then come to me with a proposed solution. It may not even be the right one. We may have discussion on the solution, but there's a difference between being a problem spotter and a problem solver.
That's right.
So,
and then usually the result that they bring you can tell whether it's been well thought through, or it's just like, hey, I'm just bringing you this problem with some guesses. Make them really kind of go back and understand that. And when it's done in that group setting too, with the different, specifically, I have a really solid team of a leadership team. They kind of play off each other. Like they know,
sure.
Like it's a little bit of pride, but it's also like, if a solution's brought, with some intensity around the discovery and what they've done to bring it to the table, the bar is kind of set internally by them, which is, I really enjoy. I really enjoy that.
Well, and I find too, lots of times you can have a solution that's not perfect, but is powered by a lot of passion, and people will get behind it, and it'll work itself out too. That's you right. Go, well, gosh, I wouldn't have thought that worked, but you came with a lot of energy and passion, and sure as shit, it worked itself out. So sometimes that's okay. I'm curious too. I got a couple other questions before we wrap here. One is you said that victim mentality is when people start to focus on or provide, I don't know if it'd be comments, that things are outside of their control. Do you believe that anything's ever really outside of our control, or how do you address that?
I mean, to me, I take this sounds a little hokey, but like to me, the future doesn't exist, right? The anxiety is kind of that imagined future collapse. And so I think if you take the mindset that you determine the future, then yes, I do feel like everything is within the possibility of your influence. Now that might be arrogant, but I think I'd rather have that approach and then be humbled in the universe and God working against that. But at the same time, it's just kind of like the whole, hey, it's gonna be okay, and if it's not, we'll deal with it when it's not. We're not gonna live in this hand-wringing state of anxiety, because that worry and doubt just robs you of really the mind, the brain power and energy you should be putting towards finding the solution. So I guess that's again, doesn't always work, but I feel like I think it's the choice that God's given us right now.
No, absolutely. I think there's a lot of power in that thought. We do have free will to be able to help shape and move things. And so it's important that, we listen to the people that God put around us too, to say, hey, look out, it's a trap, right? Don't do that. And so, and sometimes we're so hell bent on our own, I'll use myself as an example, boneheaded ideas that it's like, no, we're going to do this. This is where we're going to, like in your example, you said depends on the location. Well, if you've got all of these people and the studies and the things that you've done, I have to imagine that your team's done the work. And if somebody's coming to you going, well, this is a bad location, it's easy to look at them and go, well, either one of two things. You listened to us for the suggestion location, or you insisted on the location, so make it work,
That's right.
So one other piece, because you've talked a lot about mindset, a lot about abundance mindset, and I really love to see when I'm talking with folks, Dan, sort of how do you develop that? How do you develop an abundance mindset? Because I think especially right now, if I'm on the inside looking out at the things that are going on social media, on the news, in my business, on all the stuff, it's easy to allow those things to influence us. And so many people that I talk to, yourself included, as we've had this conversation, seem completely insulated from all that bullshit. So how do you develop that abundance mindset? How do you shield yourself from those outside forces?
Yeah, it's a muscle, for sure, that you have to develop, and I don't always do it well. I mean, I just say I don't fall into a victim mentality from time to time. It wouldn't be accurate, but it's a great, corollary or example, I guess, from the last couple of weeks. The anxiety around the election, and I won't
Sure.
get political, but what I've always told my kids, because my kids would get worried. They're like, they see all this stuff, and they're like, if we go this way, is it going to be this terrible, or if we go the other way, is it going to be this terrible? Is that both sides are worried about? And it starts again with that mindset. It's like, listen, whoever wins, we're going to win, because we're going to know whatever the rules change to, we'll find a way to win under those rules. And so that's just a different frame of, like, if somebody comes to the office and changes, moves your cheese, so to speak, well, you got to just go look and find more cheese. And if you can't do that without, reframing that conversation. But I do think, I kind of said from the outset, I mean, the psychology and leadership, to me, I forget who said this. It was, it might've been like Tony Robbins, but the psychology of the leader is more important than the skill. And, you're going to fail at the influence. I'm not always going to be able to influence everybody the way I think I should or want to. But my approach is just as important. And if you're doing it the right way with the right energy, like, the good things are going to happen. So, that's, I don't know if that's exactly answering the question, but it's a muscle you have to train and be reminded of. And it starts, I think, really, personally, it has to come out of you through just a spirit of gratitude. You have to have that in the fact that you have this problem to solve, the fact that you're in this situation of high growth, and you've been put in the responsibility of being a leader in this company. Those are great, unbelievable things that, you should be grateful for. And it's not always easy to feel that way.
No, it's what's so awesome is that is a common thread that has come through many of my shows and many of the conversations and interviews that I've had. Even last week, I was talking with a young lady, and she said, gratitude is important. And you're saying, hey, you approach this like, hey, I'm thankful I have this problem to solve. And one of the things that she shared, and I think it's powerful, is she says, we look at gratitude, and you'd probably agree with this, that it's like a lot of times when we talk about gratitude and what we're thankful for, people expect this big grandiose, well, I got to have this huge thing to be thankful for. And it's like, well, no, like you framed this brilliantly, that it's like, no, just be thankful for the problem that's in front of you, because if you weren't in this place in your life,
that's right,
you wouldn't be able to experience that. And that in itself is awesome. So I think that's
100%.
So we're coming to the tail end. I do want to touch on this one last thing you had sent me, because I love this statement. You said we wanted to talk a little bit about, and we can take as long or as short as we want on this, but preparing your people for the path and not the path for your people.
Yeah.
I'm going to repeat that again, because I want people to write it down, and I think it's very important. The statement Dan sent me says, I'd love to talk on this question of preparing your people for the path and not the path for your people. So can you expand on that for me, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's the fundamental, and it's the fundamental core of my philosophy of leadership. And it really started, the maximum was really around my family, and it was preparing my child for the path, not the path for my child. And that's a really easy one to relate to, because we want to do everything for our kids, and you see people that usually have means do a lot of things that more injure or stunt their kids' growth and their ability to kind of cope in their 20s and become their own adult, because they're out there, preparing the path for their kid, making it, and not to say things shouldn't be easy for them, or you shouldn't, offer them things that make life better than it was for you. And that's usually where it's born out of a really just an unbelievable, spot of love for your people. but it winds up crippling them. And I think the same approach in leadership and the people that you manage, all of them. And it's important to me to know what their goals are, outside of work and where they want to be, because all of them, none of them have signed up. They've signed up right now to be part of this company and this mission that we're on. But they all have goals that they want to reach. They all have things they want to do. And some of them are pretty big. And so in order to get there, you have to look at, like, they're serving a need for myself and Will and this company and the franchisees they serve. But they've got to have that. We've talked about that room to fail. They have to have that ability to kind of get to that fork in the road and make a decision. And every time they, maybe stub their toe or go the wrong path, have the ability, to put themselves back on the right foot without you having to do it for them. And so that is, when I'm approaching, bigger problems, strategic issues, things that we're planning for, it really comes from making sure that, those ideas and everything are coming, directly from them and their experience, and that we're, again, more in an approval mode, I guess, more than anything else. But, taking that mindset more than anything else with our employees.
I absolutely love it. And when I read that statement, I'll tell you, one of the things that and I love the fact that you brought up our kids, like, because we all want something better for our kids than we had for ourselves, right? Even if we had something that's really good, it's like, how can I improve on this? And I think, as a parent, as a leader, as a business person, it's important to have an idea of where the path goes. But what went through my head was, okay, so if I've got the path and I know it's headed here, but it's covered with overgrowth and rocks and all the other stuff, if I'm constantly preparing the path, so I'm going through with the sickle and clearing all the stuff and moving the rocks, it never allows them the chance to pick up their own rocks and gain their own strength. That's right. So then when they're presented with a new path that maybe they don't know where it goes, they're like, well, I can't be expected to move all that crap out of the way. That's just too heavy, because we've done all this for them. That was literally what went through my head, was like this visual of, and I have not heard it said that way. So I thought it was just super powerful, and I wanted to touch on that, Dan. I thought it was great.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's a great visual too. I think everybody can relate to it, and it's got a application in pretty much every part of your life.
So any final thoughts to take us out this afternoon, Dan?
No, I mean, I've really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate what you're doing. This is needed in a crowded world of podcasting. I feel like you're touching on some topics that I feel like, at least if anything, not that my wisdom or whatever I'm putting out here does anything else, but just inspire somebody to think a different way. Or I think this is a really cool platform. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for making the time to come on. If you'd hang out for just 1 second, I'm going to go ahead and take us out.
All right. Sounds great.
That, my friends, is going to bring us to a close for another episode of the Leadership Toolkit. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me today and listening to Dan's wisdom and insight. Make sure and check out, he said he's got these facilities all over the US. I know you may be somebody that's an entrepreneur or leader, and you may have an interest and say, hey, reach out to Dan and see what their franchise model looks like, because that could be an opportunity for you as well, if you're somebody that is in that arena and is excited about those things. But, more than anything, just I love the that champion's mindset, that athlete's mindset that Dan brought to the show today, and just the things that he shared. Make sure, go back through and, take your notes. What I would recommend more than anything, and please do me a favor, I'll ask for a favor first. Throw some thumbs up on the show, because that is one of the ways that we grow. Throw some thumbs up on it. Share the show on your social media. That would be awesome. That is one way that the YouTube channel and our Spotify shows grow. Most importantly, though, is if you know somebody that would benefit from hearing this message today, from hearing Dan's story, from hearing the information that he brought to the show, share this show with them. That's the most powerful thing that you can do. And that's my hope, is that's how you grow yourself, and then you grow other people, and you help them move forward. So I thank you, everybody, for tuning in and joining me today. Look forward to seeing you again next week. And until then, stay great. We'll talk soon, everybody.